Welcome to the Fleettalk ROCKcast, our public safety podcast powered by Rock Communications. This is where the people who build, maintain, and depend on mission-critical communications come together to talk real-world operations, lessons learned, and the technology that keeps first responders connected when it matters most. We cover the stories, the systems, and the hard lessons learned behind the scenes, so when it counts, our radios just work. This is the Fleettalk ROCKcast.
Hello, everybody. I'm Matthew Littleton with Fleettalk, and I am joined today by my friend Matt Hall, who's also from Fleettalk. And we want to talk to you a little bit about the differences between our Fleettalk system and something not many people know about, and that's the Fleettalk ham system. So, Matt, I'm glad you could join us on the podcast today. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks.
So, right off the bat, let's talk a little bit, just lay the foundation, because ideally, we hope to have people that are familiar maybe with Fleettalk and not familiar with Fleettalk ham and vice versa. So what is Fleettalk?
So Fleettalk is our public safety commercial radio system, next edge trunking that covers, obviously, as you're familiar with, South Carolina, ventures down into some of Georgia, up into North Carolina as well. But it's a next edge trunking system.
And our brand name of it is Fleettalk by Rock.
Correct.
Yes. And so Fleettalk by Rock, and before I forget, if you want to know more information about Fleettalk, you can go to fleettalkbyrock.com and get a lot more information out of that. So what makes Fleettalk by Rock, what makes our system stand out from other systems?
Well, coming from the public safety community where I retired from, critical communications are important. Having the ability to make sure that everything is going to work when you need it to work. And that's one thing that since I've worked here since 2017, we have been really working towards system redundancy, connectivity between sites, because that's obviously, if you're going to have problems during hurricanes or storms, power outages, you might have a site that loses connection to another site, but yet we have redundant connections. So we have multiple paths on our microwave network, which is a private internal microwave network that we maintain for those redundant connections, which is absolutely critically important for the public safety side to make sure you have multiple ways for sites to communicate to other sites to make that network complete.
And a lot of people don't realize that, but when you deal with a wide area trunked radio system, those tower sites, it's not magic. It has to connect back to the other tower sites to keep that wide area. Otherwise, you're just a standalone repeater.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
And I think one of the things, you and I have talked about this a lot over the years, is public safety, and especially when we're vying for budget money, we use the examples of the hurricanes, the ice storms, and decision makers often we haven't, until this year, we hadn't had a major ice storm since 2005. And so it's hard to convince them, hey, we need to prepare for this. But in the communications world, South Carolina is leading the nation in growth and construction right now. And with the amount of cable boring that's going on, new home construction grading, it is not uncommon for fiber bundles to accidentally be dug up. That doesn't affect us, correct?
No, it does not affect us at all. But everybody that's had cell phones with certain carriers have had to deal with that before when they cut these main fiber lines with construction sites, and they, their phone goes down for 5, 6, 8, 10 hours sometimes while they work to get that repaired, which is a prime example of why we don't make that our primary reliance on anything other than what we can control and maintain ourselves.
So we're not dependent on an internet connection or a fiber optic or what we used to call T1 circuits. We're not dependent on that for wide area communication.
That is correct.
That is awesome. And one of the things that I've been proud of is when you look at our system as a whole, while there's no industry standardized definition of public safety grade, I think a generally accepted definition, I think we meet or exceed that as a public safety grade system.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say, we exceed those specifications quite a bit more than some, county-owned public, safety grade systems.
One of the things I think makes us a little more redundant is there's no central controller. So each of our sites don't tie back to a centralized controller. They talk to each other through the redundant microwave path. I think that makes us a little more.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Not having that single point of failure type scenario where if this one piece goes down, you lose certain capabilities. Right. Yeah, we could lose a site, and with our overlapping site coverage in many, many areas, we could take a site offline if we needed to, and the coverage is still going to be acceptable, and everything's still going to function normally without any loss of capabilities.
I think it's interesting, as we were preparing for the for this podcast, I was doing a little research, just kind of reminding myself, refreshing myself. We have over 10% of South Carolina counties on Fleettalk by Rock. And then we have a bunch of utilities, a bunch of school districts. We've got, single agencies here. We've got major hospital and EMS systems across South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia. So anything I'm missing in our customer base from a public safety perspective?
No, that covers it. And, the things that we're able to offer these customers, especially when you start looking at like transportation for the school districts and stuff, this is stuff that many school districts have never had this opportunity to have, what I would call public safety grade communications and reliable communications. It's explosive for them to be able to have those same capabilities for the safety of the buses, the transportation, that emergency communication talk path is critical. As a parent, as you are, as I am, I like that.
I do
knowing that kids are going to be on that bus and the driver has a way to communicate in the event of an emergency, even if they're in the western part of the county where cell phones don't work.
Well, I think it's interesting. Fleettalk by Rock's been around a while now, kind of transitioning into the main topic of our conversation. You and a couple of others kind of started the Fleettalk Ham network. And so maybe kind of give us a little description of what that is and how it got started.
Well, interestingly enough, I came to work here in 2017. I was already, a licensed ham, and this was like the beginning of the technology state where you saw more people starting to do DMR, more people were doing voice over IP linking with the AllStar, which is what we chose to go with. And John Morandi, who also works for us now, he's been with us for about a year. NI4JM, he's also the one that's been working with me since the inception of the ham side. He was the one that first explored the AllStar and came up with the idea, and we talked to Tim Rock. He thought it would be a great idea, so we started by taking one of our VHF repeaters here in Rock Hill and one in Charlotte, and that was the first two we linked. It just took off. I mean, it was, people liked it. It was analog audio. Mm-hmm. People didn't have to fool with DMR code plugs and that sort of thing, and it just, it just kind of wasn't planning to be something as big as it's turned into. But it is just, it's grown from that.
And I think that's interesting, that the one thing I like about the ham, and for viewers that may not understand when we say ham, we're talking about amateur radio, a portion of the FCC spectrum that's allocated for amateur radio use. And there's a little something for everybody. Like me, I'm rarely on analog voice. Most of what I do is HF, but that's okay, But a lot of people, they don't want advanced. They don't want to explore or expand their technological capabilities. They're comfortable and they like 2-meter 440 analog voice, and that's okay. That ham radio, there's something there for them, and I think that's one of the things that you guys did. So, how is Fleettalk Ham different from our Fleettalk system? Because I think we get some confusion there. We had a question not too long ago: why are you running a public safety system on ham radio technology? And nothing could be farther from the truth. It is two completely separate systems.
It is definitely two total different systems, and anybody that's familiar with any of the FCC licensing and guidelines should know or should understand that amateur radio frequencies, that's what it is. It's for amateur radio. Yep. Public safety communications, commercial stuff, it's two totally separate and different things. Just because public safety needs it, they just can't pick up a ham radio and start talking on a ham network. It's not allowed. We are part of the microwave network, and that's how we use our connectivity to get between all of our sites that are linked, which is on same microwave backbone, but we're on a total separate VLAN separated out from the public safety stuff. So it's basically a separate network.
Essentially, we have isolated the two networks, and for technology purposes, it's two separate networks. It's no different than if you ride a fiber connection or a backbone. It's you're taking your path, the other system's taking its path.
That is correct. Yep, and that is how we get our connectivity. Yep. And that was one of the things that that was attractive to us is coming from the public safety communication side, amateur radio has always been something that's been part of that emergency communications on the civilian side. And I was like, if we can do this, and we can do this where we have, that same infrastructure, that redundant path for communications for interconnecting these sites and not have to rely on the public internet in cases of storms and hurricanes and all this like we've seen, that still allows us to be very flexible with our network and partition off certain repeaters if we need to support emergency communications in the case of Hurricane Helene. We can do all those different things and still have that infrastructure that's public safety grade to help on the emergency side of the amateur radio community.
Makes sense. It makes sense. And I think, when we talk about it, I wish I could take everybody to one of our sites and you can clearly see the distinctive difference. The Fleettalk ham repeater is a conventional standalone repeater, has a little Raspberry Pi and a radio interface board. That's it. And then you've got the Fleettalk by ROCK system. It's a next edge trunking.
Oh, yes.
It's very complex. So it's two totally different systems.
Correct.
Who can use the Fleettalk by ham? I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but realistically, who can use it?
Any licensed, FCC licensed amateur radio operator is open to using any of our repeaters that we have on the air. We've not put out any kind of requirements as far as paying. Nobody has to pay dues. There's nothing like that. But any licensed amateur radio operator get on there and just use it just as they use any other repeater. So as long as they've got a valid FCC license in the amateur radio, and obviously a technician class is the first one, so it makes you eligible.
Are there any routine users? Are there any groups that call routine nets? What do you see on that?
We don't. That was one of the things we've had a lot of people ask. Since we have such a wide area of coverage, we knew that the people would be interested in using our network for nets. So we have one net, the very initial one we started on, which we worked with the group down in Chester, and it's the Piedmont Link, and it has grown to be an extremely large net on Wednesday evenings at 8:30, and it's very, very popular. We just kind of assist. We were assisting back when we just had a few repeaters on the network, working with that club to help broaden their footprint a little bit, get some more use on the repeaters, and it's just we've kept that part of it. And the only other nets that we're doing now is we've started doing a training net for the Skywarn down in the Columbia region, where we partition off a certain number of the repeaters that cover that region for Skywarn to make sure that they have really good coverage in that area, because before that they'd only had a couple repeaters, but they were trying to cover 4 or 5 counties.
Right.
So it was very difficult. So since that's based on the emergency side of communications, we've ventured to do that. And then the only other thing that we started recently is there's been a STEM youth group.
Oh, no, that's cool.
So they started out, and that's we weren't sure where that was going to go at first, but after we got approached by it and we said, yeah, we'll start this. And the group is hosted by Vicki Carnes, 83i. And as it started to grow, it really took off. And her whole concept was, as you and I both know, we're not getting any younger, obviously from the gray that you can see. Right. But amateur radio and ham radio seems, I don't want to say that it's a dying thing, but it just doesn't seem to be the interest in the younger youth group as there used to be. We didn't have cell phones.
Right.
So radios were really cool. This was
That's
something.
right.
But, cell phones are obviously today's youth. That's what they're gravitating towards. So her process was, or her idea was, to start this STEM group and work with another STEM group, I think they're in Wisconsin, and actually educate as young as 8, 10 years old on ham radio. She works with them, studies, they take the test, they get their license, and they do a STEM net every Thursday evening at 6:30, a little bit earlier because they're younger kids.
Right.
And she actually coaches them, and the kids are running the nets to get the experience, and it is absolutely fantastic.
That's really cool. Now, so you said something in Wisconsin. How are, being 2 minutes 440, how are they talking to the group in Wisconsin?
So our system it's obviously based on the AllStar linking network, which we have, different ways to come in through that, or EchoLink, which has been around for years and years and years. So some of the groups up around Wisconsin come in, I think, via EchoLink, and some come in via AllStar. So, it really has broadened the footprint. So you have kids, anywhere from 8, 10 to 14, 15 years old, and she works with them for them to call the nets, and it's great. And the response from the ham community has been phenomenal. At first cool. It was a little bit slow, but then now everybody's checking in, talking to the kids, letting them know how good a job they're doing.
That's awesome.
Giving out. So it is really, from a ham radio perspective, as you can, relate to, it's really cool to see that younger group getting that opportunity and getting that guidance and it taking off like that. So that's been a really, really cool venture for us.
Just it made me think when we were talking about Echolink and AllStar, neither Fleet Talk by Rock nor the Fleet Talk Ham need the internet to exist here in South Carolina, right?
That's correct. That's ours
correct.
rides on totally on the internal private network for all of our repeaters, and the only thing the outside internet is for is somebody from some other region of the country if they wanted to link into our system.
On the Fleet Talk Ham side.
On the Fleet Talk Ham side, correct.
Obviously we talked about it being 2 meter and 440. Is this just a voice-only network, or are there any other features you have of the Fleet Talk Ham?
Fleet Talk, we do have, I think, 4 or 5 APRS digipeaters around, which was actually the very first thing we put up was one of the APRS digipeaters. But it's worked very well, and the original one we put up is still the same one that is on there today, so it's been up since day one.
Now, APRS is Automatic Position Reporting System. It's been around since the 80s. Bob Berninga, I think
That's correct. Yep. I'm not an expert on it like John is. That was more his brainchild. He was really...
It's interesting at the global level to see not only APRS coming back around, but we're also seeing packet radio come back around as well.
That's true, and that's, again, I've said this before, but coming from the public safety side of communications, I know you and I have talked about that. We're in the process of trying to get some of our sites equipped with some WinLink gateways, nodes, gateways. I'm still in the learning process on this. One of our system engineers, Trip Williamson, is going to help us with that, and I know you're also well familiar with that. So that's one of the things we really want to help roll out as well, public safety aspect of the ham guys. It gives you that email access. So, again, if the internet goes down, you as a ham could send an email to me as a ham on the other side of the state.
It's interesting because, something that we see a lot, there are rare cases where disasters are regional, affecting massive areas of the country. Most cases, they're localized events, maybe affecting a few counties. It's quite possible that, I may not have internet in the upstate, but there's internet in Charleston, because it's riding that microwave backbone, it can get internet there. So there's a lot of cool things to that. That's I'm really excited. And I think a lot of people don't realize, not only are we public safety professional technicians, but a lot of us here in the company are licensed amateur radio operators.
Yeah, and we've had quite a few here. In the last several years, technicians that we've hired, other guys that have retired from public safety, that are ham radio operators. So, and which has been great because up until that, it was basically John and myself. And it gets hard, running around the state trying to maintain some of this stuff. So now that we have probably 6 or 8 different guys that are have their ham license that are familiar. So
now one of the things I think is interesting, the backbone that's taken for and I guess I should have said this at the beginning. So you guys actually formed a ham radio club, the W4FTK Amateur Radio Club. It's recognized by the FCC.
That's correct.
And that is that We4FTK is kind of the parent of all of the ham radio network for Fleet Talk. It's legit. It's legitimate. We operate it just like any other club would operate with a single standalone repeater. But on top of that, we have the blessing of Fleet Talk by Rock, John Rock, allowing us to ride that backbone, allowing us to tie into that and giving us a lot of the network management that a lot of places and clubs don't have access to.
That's a game changer, I think, for the ham community as far as we have that access. Because to my knowledge, nobody else has a network that covers as much area as us with that resilient of a microwave network that I'm aware of.
Do you know off the top of your head how many repeaters you have now on Fleet Talk Network?
I want to say I think it's 15 or 16, and we've got really 2 more that are hopefully going to be coming online within the next couple months.
That is very cool. Now, if people want more information about the Fleet Talk Ham Network, where can they find that at?
Number one, our website, W4FTK.com, will take you directly there, and it has a listing of general information. It has all the repeaters, where they're located. We run the same DCS tone 315 on all the linked repeaters to make it easy. It's consistent across the board. We're on Facebook. We have a private Facebook group. We had to make it a private group just because of all the social media stuff that happens. So, if you're a Facebook user, you can go to Facebook and just do W4FTK, ask to join, answer the couple questions. I'll tell you, if you don't answer the couple questions, we're not going to allow it. We want to know your call sign. We want to make sure it's legit.
Yeah.
And we do, it's not a super active group, but we do make all the announcements there if there's any questions we have to the group. So, and our group has grown to, I think, close to 1,000 people now in that Facebook group. So it has really taken off. And then Repeater Book. Obviously, if you need information, repeaterbook.com has everything. It's updated. You can go there and has a great app, too, for your phone.
And all of the repeaters in the Fleet Talk network are coordinated through the Southeastern Repeater Association.
That is correct. All the repeaters are coordinated. So, I mean, we just asked, if anybody wants to use it, just make sure you're a cordial user. And, there's a lot of people on there during certain times. So, sometimes you might have to share the airtime with some others. But
one of the cool things, there's a couple other linked systems in South Carolina, and the SC Heart system, South Carolina Hospital Emergency Amateur Radio Team. It was conceived in, I'd say, in the mid 2000s. I'm not 100% sure on it. John Crockett was one of the brainchilds behind it, one of my mentors. But it was designed for the hospitals to have backup communications, and it rides South Carolina ETV's microwave network. So it's got a dedicated mission. It's there for the sunny day times for any amateur to use, but during emergencies, it's there primarily for the hospital emergency amateur radio teams to function on. And I'm sure there's other things that they would do, but that's its mission, and I think what you guys have done with the Fleet Talk is said, hey, we've also got this network out here that's available, and it doesn't have a specific mission field. It's got, hey, it's emergency communications. This is something that's available to use.
Correct. Yes, and that's a good point, because one of the things that came up early on, I mean, we maybe had 2 or 3 repeaters, and it really started to get some attention. Somebody asked us the question, do you plan on moving it over to DMR to make it digital, since you're going to try to build it out across? And we talked about it, and very quickly, no. Yeah. I mean, it's because I would listen to different nets around, and you'd have some groups that would do analog nets and some that would do digital, or some groups that would actually do an analog net, and then they'd say, well, let's switch over and we'll call a net on digital. And you would get literally 10% or less of the people that would check in on digital. Yeah. And being in that community a lot, DMR is a different beast. To program a radio from the keypad on DMR is just aggravating. Yeah. So it requires a computer. And, it's a different technology. So we said, no, we're going to stay analog. We want this system to be able to work best it could possibly work, reach the most amount of people in case of an emergency. And that's going to be analog, conventional analog.
Well, Matt, I really want to thank you for taking time. It's not like me or you either one had a choice. We got instructed to do this, but it's good to sit down. It is still radio, and we got to sit here and talk. And so if you have more questions about Fleet Talk Ham, W4FTK.com. And if you have questions about our Fleet Talk by Rock public safety system, it's fleettalkbyrock.com. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to share and smash that like and subscribe buttons. Thanks.